What's going on, guys? Welcome to the LowKick MMA Weekly Roundup. I'm your host, Ryan Galloway. Joining me, as always, Jordan Ellis. And Jordan, we had a key matchup in the middleweight division this past weekend between Jack Hermansson and Marvin Vettori on short notice. What do you think of the whole card as a whole before we break down the fights? What do you think about the event?
Well, going into these events, every time you're going into them, it seems to be a nightmare. Everything that goes wrong seems to go wrong. Just talking about the main event, Hermansson lost two different opponents. This was his third opponent. On the day, we lost three fights, so it's just all a bit of a shit show. But in the end, the fights delivered. They started late and things like that. But the actual fights themselves, the fighters stepped up to the plate, they delivered, and there was a bunch of fighters who probably deserve bonuses, and I'm not actually sure who got them, but I'm sure Dana White will be slipping some bags of money to some different people today and over the next few days. But it was a really good event, all things considered.
I did notice a lot of people complaining about that late start, whereas I didn't catch the early prelims, so I wasn't too worried about the start time. But yeah, I heard that it was an hour and a half later than usual, so it seems like there was problems. But like you said, as the event went on, there was lots of good moments, which we'll get to. But we'll jump straight in at the main event, which was in the middleweight division between Hermansson and Vittori. Late notice for both guys, I'd say. Hermansson obviously prepared for Darren Till, very, very different fighter to Marvin Vettori. Then, a couple of weeks beforehand, he started preparing for Kevin Holland. Similar, not too similar to Vettori, closer than Till. And then all of a sudden, a week out from the fight, he gets matched up with Vettori. I don't know if he had to change too much of his game plan going into this fight. But, hey, it was a great fight, and Vettori really showed up, didn't he?
Yeah, just the main thing for Hermansson is it was a huge step up. No disrespect for Kevin Holland, but I think Hermansson would have easily dealt with Holland, whereas Vittori's a serious contender, and he's got to be, especially after this win, he's got to be, noticed as that. And the bookmakers, they had Vittori the favourite going into it, and that just shows that everything you need to know about him and how highly people rate him. And on the night, he looked fantastic, and I think they both look fantastic. I think Vittori's just I think I've mentioned it before. He's just got a bit of a mean streak about him. He's a bit of an animal, and he's just someone you don't want to be running into in this middleweight division, because he's got the bit between his teeth. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and he's just a nasty guy. And with that, he's also talented as well. So it just looks like he's destined to go places. And Hermansson was in his way, and he was tough and he was durable, and you give as good as you got, but in the end, he was the deserved loser, and Vettori was a deserved winner.
Yeah, and I mean, Vettori showed off all facets of his game in this fight. He had lots of stand-up to start off with, a bit of wrestling in there. He got takedowns and remained on top for a long time. Great scrambling at times. He really showed all his skill set in this fight, especially when in the first round, he dropped Hermansson. I honestly thought he could have ended it there. But instead of finishing the ground and pound, he went to the grappling, which seems like the most dangerous thing you can do with Hermansson. Like, you're putting yourself in the threat of getting submitted. But he managed to defend well, managed to remain on top, dominate that first round, dominated the second round as well. He had a lot of control time in that round. The third and fourth, I scored for Hermansson. I thought Hermansson was coming on strong as the fight got later, and mostly because, in my eyes, Vettori seemed to be getting tired. But, hey, in that fifth round, he kicked it back in. Both guys slugged it out, and Vettori obviously ended up on top at the end of the round, looked a bit more crisp in the round, landed more damage in the round. So that was his round. I definitely thought he won the fight. Could even give him a 10-8 in that first.
Yeah, I thought it was, one of the fights, it was close, it was competitive, but it was very clear for Marvin Vettori. I think I had him 4-1. I give him that third round, but it looked like the tide might turn. It looked like Hermansson might be able to use his cardio and get the win, but Vettori, that was the most impressive facet of what he did on the weekend, is that he had a premature weight cut. He had to rush everything, and he still was able to keep the 5 round distance despite how hard he goes. He's a big guy. He's packed full of muscle, and he was throwing a lot of stuff, and he was just able to maintain it. So, as I said, he's an animal. He's definitely one to watch out for. That's a huge signature win. He'll probably be top 5 by this time tomorrow. So he can go for the title. He can go for these top guys, and I think everyone will want to watch him now. And I think he'd be very competitive against anyone, whether it's Israel Adesanya, Paulo Costa, Darren Till, anyone. He looks really, really good.
And I did want to get to that. Obviously, he called out Paulo Costa after his fight, but then I'm reading on the site that he's asked for an immediate title shot now, which he should have done in the first place. Whittaker said he wants to take time off. I know that Israel's fighting light heavyweight, so Whittaker's time off doesn't really count. But he should have called for a title shot or the number one contender fight with Whittaker. Don't understand this Costa call out. It seems like the hardest road to victory there. It seems like you got to fight through Costa to get to the title when you can just skip him. But regardless, how do you think he matches up against either of those guys, Costa or Israel?
I think he matches up well against both of them. I think he's a live, he'll be probably a live dog in both of them, but he's very live, as I've just said. And I think that the title match is probably the fight to make. I think it's the most exciting fight to make in the middleweight division right now, because obviously the fought before, it was very close. There's definitely a bit of needle there. Vettori's very, outspoken about his dislike of Israel Adesanya, who I'm sure he's going to have some things to say himself once they actually get close to each other. So I think that's the fight to make. I honestly think Whittaker, he seems content to wait, which I don't mind. I think he probably does deserve another shot, but we've seen it. I don't think people are clamouring for it. I don't think a lot of people are too interested in seeing Izzy step up to light heavyweight. And from what he said, it's not going to be a permanent move anyway. So what's the point, really? He should stay and defend his title, and Vittori's there. And if he wants to fight in January or February, I'm sure Vittori will be ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you can do Glover against who's the champ of lightweight? I'm blanking right. Blachowicz. You do that fight, which everyone's like trying to get as well. But on the other side of the coin, I want to talk about Hermansson. I think you just rebook the Darren Till fight, right? I think you just reset to square one, book him against Till again. Would you be keen to see that?
Yeah, I don't think Hermansson, he's lost obviously, but he hasn't lost too much, in terms of credit and things like that. And everyone knows how good he is. He just lost, to the better, busier man on the night, and so Darren Till is still the fight to wait. I hope they rebook that, but I don't think wherever he ends up, he's not going to end up, fighting down the rankings. He's going to be fighting Costa or, a Whittaker or a Darren Till. It's going to be a big fight, and I can't wait to watch, because he was still brilliant in that fight. He just got edged out, and that's all it was. There's no real losers in this one. He looked great.
Yeah, some other names I was going to bring up, but I suppose we'll wait until later when we get into the next card to speak about those other kind of contenders in that area. Jumping onto the co-main, though, someone who did pass a big test on Saturday night was Jamaal Hill, who took out Ovince St. Preux by TKO in round 2. And, a lot of people struggle with Ovince St. Preux. I don't know why. He's a great fighter, but I don't know specifically why people have trouble with him. Like Ryan Spann, I think it was. No, it wasn't Ryan Spann. Who fought him last? I'm blanking. Ovince St. Preux.
Menifield.
Alonzo Menifield. He had a bit of trouble. I don't know if it was the timing or something. He just couldn't get going, couldn't get a rhythm on OSP. But Jamaal Hill had it down. He managed to land on him more and eventually put him away.
Yeah, he looked brilliant with Jamaal, and I thought this was a bit early for him. The level of competition, he was jumping, I'd say 3 or 4 levels from where he's been. But he's another one of them guys. I was on the media day last week, and he's one of them. He's got an intensity about him. He's like, he's all business, and you could just tell from the way he was speaking that he just thought he was going to rip St. Preux's head off. And I found it an odd matchup, to be fair. I think OSP is still top 15, probably not anymore, but at this point he was, and they seem to match him up against people who they're trying to build names basically off OSP. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the people to go in the 60 cuts. I'm sure we'll get to that later. But on the night, Hill looked brilliant. He just had the range on him. So every time OSP 40 he was out of range, he was getting pinged with something. And then when the finish come, he was just relentless. And it was a good stoppage in the end, even though OSP was still on his feet.
Yeah, definitely had to stop it there. He was taking a lot of damage. And now Jamaal Hill's 9-0 from memory, or maybe 10-0. No, I think he's 9-0, undefeated. What he'll be ranked after this, probably fringe 10 or top. No, was OSP ranked? I think he wasn't ranked, was he?
I think he was 15th, so I think he's going to squeeze in there, and that's a very good result for him considering where he's come from. It was a huge step up. One, he passed with flying colours, but now it's the business end, and it's the top 15. And while light heavyweight isn't the most stacked, I think he's 8-0 or 8-0 with 1 no contest. It's going to be tough battles, but he looks very, very capable, and it'll be exciting to watch him hopefully OSP sticks around, but with all these cuts the plans are make, he might be one who goes, and I wouldn't be too surprised. But either way, he's been a brilliant fighter, and I'm sure he'll have success wherever he goes.
Yeah. No, I hope he stays because he's a great fighter. We'll chat about that when we get to news, but yeah, good work by Hill. Keen to see what he does next. Jumping on before that, we had Gabrielle Benitez versus Justin James. Justin James was someone I was really impressed by in their debut. Thought he looked fantastic. Thought he was at the perfect weight class, the great size for it. But then seeing him in this fight against Benitez, he just could not get past the kicks and get in range. He struggled real bad. He looked dangerous. Let's not discredit him or anything. He looked dangerous the whole time. He looked like his punches had power. But the kicking game of Benitez was just problems for him. And eventually that's what did him in. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think Benitez, he was one of I think he was a pretty surefire thing for me in this fight. I prefer Benitez at featherweight. I think he looked good, and that loss to Sadi Hughes, I don't think you need to take too much. I think he should have stayed there. But besides that, he looked great. Justin James, he come out, he burst onto the scene with a huge win. But since then, it has been struggle city. Gary Benitez, in my opinion, is just a couple of levels above. And when he actually landed that knee to the body, oh, it was painful to watch. I felt so bad for Justin James, but brilliant win for Benitez, and it was a nice spot on that main card as well for both fighters. Who aren't top level fighters, but they got the showcase, and Benitez absolutely ran away with it. It was brilliant.
Absolutely. And before that, we had light heavyweights Roman Dilidzi versus John Allen, and this is a really fun fight. A lot of grappling in this one. A lot of trying to avoid heel hooks and stuff and sorts like that. And the striking on the feet was quite impressive. I loved when Dilidzi, I hope that's how you say it, he was on the feet and he said to his corner, "Do you want me to submit him?" And the corner were like, "Yes, submit him." And then he's like engaged in the grappling. It was really entertaining. What do you think of that fight?
Fight, it's just obviously the thing that sticks out is the fact that it was a split decision when it very clearly we're in a split decision, and we speak about these more and more, and I think it was Chris Lee is the guy who's coming under fire because it seems to be him every time. He's the guy splitting the decision. But yeah, it was a good win. It was again one that I expected Dilidzi to come through and look good in, and he did. It's just a shame that at the end, I think the main talking point at the end of this fight is that split decision, which it really shouldn't be. It should be, Dilidzi looking great and Allen, hanging tough with him.
I agree. That scorecard was really weird, but hey, he got the win in the end, so there's not too much complaints there from him, I'm sure. We'll jump on to the final first fight on the main card. Probably one of the biggest talking points of the card. The awesome slam knockout from Jordan Levitt over Matt Wyman. I know a lot of people going to this fight were thinking, how would Levitt do against someone like Wyman who's been around for so long? And I can't see him doing any better than that. That was the perfect scenario. Goes out there, ducks a punch, gets the double leg, lifts him up and slams him. It was an awful knockout, and I'm so glad Wyman's okay. But hey, it was impressive, wasn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I seen something like that. It was weird, and it goes with Jordan Levitt, in the nicest way possible. He's a bit of a weird guy. He's an eccentric in this sport anyway, and at the end he's doing splits, he's doing dirty dancing moves, and he's pulling things off like that. So I think he's going to be an exciting fighter to watch. I think he's going to be one that the hardcore fans take to. But on the night, it was sensational, and it was it was just it was brutal, and he was speaking after fight. He was doing that slam with bad intentions. He got the results he wanted against Matt Wyman, who's a veteran. He's well known. He's a popular fighter. He just hasn't been the same since he come back. I think he took a few years off. He's come back and he hasn't been the same. And I'd hope he'd hang it up now because it's three lower level guys he's lost to where he's been used to competing at the close to the top. So. Hopefully he's done now, but Jordan Levitt, he looks like the future. He looks like certainly want to watch it lightweight, and I can't wait to keep watching him.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any of these prelims you want to touch on, or we'll jump straight over the pay-per-view?
The heavyweight fight I want to mention, just because when we last spoke, I was kind of giving them both some stick, to be fair, and I do stand by what I said, but I think Jake Collier, I was a bit harsh on him because he did look good. He's clearly got talent. It's just, he's carrying that bit of extra weight. So I do stand by that. He should be going down to light heavyweight or middleweight. I don't really want to see him in any more heavyweight fights, but he looked good despite his size. He had a decent gas tank, and John Vellante, I think look poor as well. And as we're saying, when the cuts are coming round, he might be one to go because he's not a heavyweight. He's fighting a heavyweight even though he shouldn't be. And when he's doing it, he's not looking great either. And he's getting beat by Jake Collier, who I do stand by that shouldn't be fighting a heavyweight and isn't a good heavyweight, but he looked good on the night. So props to him. Yeah, I just wanted to address that just because I was a bit harsh last time. I felt a bit sly on them.
Fair enough. Like I said, I didn't catch the earlier fight, so can't really comment on that one. But we'll jump on over UFC 256 this coming weekend. Figueiredo versus Moreno, a fight that probably should have happened last pay-per-view at 255. But hey, Moreno got the win, Figueiredo got the win, and here it is now. And I know you're a big fan of Moreno and his style and seeing this matchup against Figueiredo. So I'll let you start breaking it down first. What are your thoughts on the fight and how it'll go?
I think it's a brilliant fight, and as you said, we should have got it last time. Moreno, besides everything, he is the clear number one contender, and that doesn't necessarily mean I think he's going to win or I think he's going to pull off the upset. I just think he deserves it, and even if he gets knocked out in the first round, at least he's had a shot and he's getting it. So I'm glad to see that. Figueiredo's look brilliant, and the thing is, he's already getting compared to Demetrius Johnson, and that's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem because he hasn't looked that good. He hasn't really done anything to earn that type of stuff. So, and also I do worry about his weight. He does struggle at the flyweight limit to turn around within a month. That could be a struggle for him against someone like Moreno, who, when I spoke to him last week, was saying he's very comfortable at the weight and thinks the weight cut might be an issue for Figueiredo. That's something to look at, but I think on paper it's Figueiredo. He's the guy, isn't he? Right now, he's the guy. He should defend his title. He should make pretty easy work of Brandon Moreno. But I think he's a live dog in this, and it's just one of them. I'm not really going to predict. I just want to watch it and enjoy it because I do think it's a brilliant fight.
Yeah, as far as weight cuts go for Figueiredo, I think when he was missing weight, from memory, listening to the lead up to the last pay-per-view anyway, he didn't have a nutritionist, which he has now. So I don't think weight's going to be too much of an issue with him because last time, 255 wasn't an issue for him. And hopefully he doesn't miss it because that would be very poor, especially if he misses by bad and they don't have the fight and then it loses its main event. But hey, I'm happy for the co-main to bump up. We'll get into that in a sec. Moreno, he's got a good style to face Figueiredo. He's well-versed everywhere. We saw him on the ground with a black belt, like a legit black belt in his last fight, and he just dominated, held the back for a long while. So I wouldn't say Figueiredo's going to out-grapple him. The biggest threat Figueiredo has in grappling department is his neck attacks, right? The second you shoot on him, he clamps on the neck. We saw it against Alex Perez. He doesn't waste any time, and once he gets it, he's got the squeeze to put you out. So I don't really expect Moreno to have a grappling heavy approach to this fight. I think he's going to want to keep it on the feet and try and use his speed and volume to outdo Figueiredo, who, as we saw in the last fight, he's not the fastest striker. He's happy to sit there and wait and counter off you. Like Alex Perez was outstriking him in that fight for the little time it went. And most of that came down to just the speed and the pace of Alex Perez in comparison to Figueiredo. So if Moreno can stay on the outside and pick him apart, he has a method to victory there. The problem is, Figueiredo's got power in his hands. If he lands on you, you go to sleep. If he gets a hold of your neck, you go to sleep. So it's a very dangerous puzzle to solve, but I'm interested to see how he goes about it.
Yeah, Moreno's got a few different things he can rely on. I think he's going to have to really put on a true mixed martial arts performance to get the win in this one, because from everything I've seen, he's kind of got a granite chin. So I think out of all the guys, Figueiredo's face coming up, Moreno is well equipped to take these punches. He's also got a elite ground game. He's just one of them guys. But then Figueiredo, it depends if he is what people are saying he is. If he's the Demetrius Johnson, if he's the next big thing, then he'll make it look easy. But if he's not, Moreno could give him a really good run for his money and could actually cause an upset here. It's an interesting fight between, in my opinion, the number one and number two of flyweight, and I can't wait to watch flyweight. On fire right now. It's great to watch. From where they come from, on the edge of being cooked entirely, to here now headlining the final pay-per-view of the year. 2 pay-per-views on the bounce. They've been towards the top of. So it's brilliant stuff, and I can't wait to watch.
Yeah, you think about the first matchup between Figueiredo and Benitez, wasn't even a pay-per-view, it was a fight night from memory. Even the second one, I think, was a fight night. So they're clearly putting all the chips behind Figueiredo, trying to build him up to be a star. And yeah, I'm keen to see this fight and hopefully it pays off for whoever wins. We'll jump into the co-main event. Probably my favorite fight of the card. Maybe one of my favorite fights of the year on paper. Obviously, I haven't seen it yet. Hopefully, it lives up to what I think. But we've got Tony Ferguson taking on Charles Oliveira. And why this is such a fun fight to me is because stylistically, both of them are very similar. I would say in terms of being more technical, Oliveira is better, both in the grappling and the striking, technically. But Ferguson's just so good at mixing it up and throwing unorthodox stuff, both on the feet and on the ground, that it's always fun, and he always seems to get the win, aside from his last outing. I'll leave this one to you to break down first. What do you think?
It's a great fight. It's what kind of saves this card. We've lost Amanda Nunes, we've lost Peter Yan versus Sterling, but people are still hyped about this card, and it's mainly because Tony Ferguson, he's got pay-per-view selling value. I'd imagine he's making some of the back end off this card because he is the name on this card. He is carrying it, the people's main event, and that's one thing I'm a bit, I kind of wish this fight was 5 rounds. I think Tony Ferguson might be able to melt Oliveira over 5 rounds, but over 3, it's a really intriguing fight, and for me, it's all about what Tony Ferguson shows up, because after taking such a beating, and that was a bad beating against Justin Gaethje, how does he return? He's in his late 30s, and he's against someone in Oliveira who's streaking right now. He looks brilliant. So very interesting. If prime Tony Ferguson shows up, I really do fancy him to win a decision or get a late stoppage. But if he doesn't, Oliveira can get a name on his record, get the first huge name on his record, and it's another really interesting fight which I can't wait to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about Oliveira's recent run. He's got, well, not even his recent run. He's got 19 submissions on his record. He's a submission ace. But then in his little last few fights, he's got a few knockouts on there. He's very well rounded recently. His striking's gotten much better. And Tony Ferguson, he's went on that run of 12 fights in a row where he won. He finished a bunch of people with a bunch. He had a couple of submissions in there. He had a couple of knockouts. I would say a lot of Oliveira's submissions come from neck attacks when people are shooting. Not all of them. He you think, I can't remember which fight it was recently. He aggressively pursued the takedown from the start and got the rear naked choke. Was that Jim Miller? Am I right? About Jim Miller? I can't remember who it was. Anyway, he likes to use his wrestling ability to set up his submissions, as well as catching their necks as they shoot on him. When's the last time you've seen Tony Ferguson shoot a double leg on someone? Tony Ferguson's always injuring his opponent, waiting for them to shoot on him, then capturing the neck, or like in Kevin Lee's case, waiting for Kevin Lee to take him down and then submitting off his back. So I'm not too worried about Tony Ferguson getting submitted by a guillotine choke or a DAS or something. If Tony's going to have a problem in the grappling, it's going to be if Oliveira comes in with a grappling-heavy approach and takes him down or jumps on his back or something like that. I think we're going to see more of a stand-up fight in this one, and it's really going to come down to, can Ferguson overwhelm him with pressure, or will Oliveira just be able to take a few shots and land bigger ones back and do what Gaethje did to him,
Yeah, I think it's going to be 100% striking. I think unless, someone gets hurt and the opportunities there's just a sink of choking, that's the only way I can see it happening. I think Oliveira, although he is so talented on the ground, he'll fancy his chances on the feet. Tony Ferguson, besides anything else, is very hittable. You can hit him. So if you can hit him, you can hurt him. And Oliveira, he'll fancy his chances on the feet. I really do think he'll think that, especially after Gaethje was just teeing off on him. It weren't like Gaethje was, doing anything super technical. He was just letting his left hand fly and was just catching him all night with it. So I think I'm expecting a really fast start from Oliveira, who's going to put, be boxing his head off for a little while. But then Tony Ferguson, he's got that Homer Simpson thing where he'll just bounce back, he'll take it all. And it's all comes down as the fight progresses. How does Oliveira cope with that pace picking up and the fact that Tony Ferguson's not going away? It's very interesting. If Tony Ferguson's at his prime, I really do think he'll beat Oliveira, and then potentially, we can go on and get the Khabib fight. But Oliveira, it seems like his time. It seems like, he's 7-8 in a row now. He's getting the biggest fights of his career. He's still very young. It's his time to go and make a statement by taking out Tony Ferguson. So it's a huge co-main event. It's sad it's not 5 rounds, but still, it really bumps up this UFC 256 card.
And I just want to say, I think there's more riding on Tony winning here than just Tony's future in the UFC and the lightweight rankings. I think the only way we get Khabib to come back, there's 2 ways. I think it's either going to be Tony Ferguson or GSP, right? I don't think that's a wild opinion. If Tony gets the win here, I think they try and do the Khabib fight next year. If Charles Oliveira gets the win here, I reckon that it'll probably be Khabib move on, maybe does a super fight with GSP, but he'll vacate the title, and then we'll see Oliveira take on the winner of Poirier McGregor. I almost forgot that one. But otherwise, I can't see Khabib coming back to fight an Oliveira, a Poirier, a McGregor. What do you think?
Yeah, it was all riding on this because the plans to meet in Abu Dhabi, aren't they, Khabib and Dana? So I'd imagine that's when they're going out for the Fight Island fights in January. So if Tony Ferguson wins, Dana's got a very clear case of, I can give you this much money to fight someone who's always been on your back, like you've been trying to fight him forever. He's got a case to make. But if Oliveira wins, it's like, yeah, it's going to be Dustin O'Connor. And you know he's not going to fight them. It's not going to be Oliveira. I don't think, as impressive as this win would be, I don't think it's going to be enough to get him a title shot. But, and especially against Khabib. Khabib is not, I just don't see the interest for him in that. But I still think it'd be a dangerous fight either way, and I hope Oliveira does get that chance. I think Tony Ferguson needs to win to drag Khabib out of the times. I don't think GSP is going to be coming back. I think it's Tony Ferguson or bust at this point.
As competitive as I think this fight's going to be, I just want Ferguson to win so we can get that Khabib fight finally. But interested to see what goes down, and yeah, may the best man win. Before that, we have another lightweight bout between Renato Moicano, who's obviously coming up from featherweight. He came up and had one win. I believe he got a submission. I just can't remember what it was. And then we have Rafael Fiziev, who's had 2 fights in the UFC now. And no, maybe it's just the one. But he's that Tiger Muay Thai ace. So this is really a clash of styles here. You have a striker versus a grappler. Moicano's grappling is his best asset, and he's a fantastic grappler. Fiziev, such a good Muay Thai fighter. Got really clean slips, got good counters. I just think in this fight, Moicano is going to drag him to the ground and submit him. What are your thoughts?
After seeing Fiziev's last fight, I am a bit high on him. He really did do a job on Mark DeCasey, and DeCasey's a striker, and he just outstruck him all night. Moicano, he needs to drag him to the mat. I think Moicano has been susceptible. You know, he's been knocked out in, I think, a first round knockout. He's had a few of them. So he's not necessarily, you know, got the best chin in the world. He needs to avoid striking with this guy who's a dangerous striker. He needs to get it to the mat. Will he be able to do it? I'm not sure. That's why it's such an interesting fight. It's a huge step up, I think, from his lightweight debut to now. I think Fiziev is you know, fringe top 15. Let's see how it goes. I'm not sure.
And just one thing to note, this is the weakest fight on this main card, and it's still an incredible fight, great matchmaking. So it just shows this card went from being something people were moaning and groaning about, losing its main event, saying it's not going to be a great card, to what we have now, which is pretty incredible. And I think it's much better than the last one we had. So yeah, jumping off from that, we do have another middleweight bout between Kevin Holland, who was obviously meant to fight this past weekend, taking on Jacare Souza. I think this is a very different fight for Holland than getting ready for Hermansson. Hermansson's a ground and pound artist. Jacare's got the highest level black belt you can get in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he never uses it. He doesn't drag you to the ground and submit you. He likes to stand and bang with people. I'm sure he could pull off submissions, but I imagine he's going to try and stand with Holland. Does that play into Holland's game plan, being the longer guy? What are your thoughts?
I think Holland's kind of had a touch here, even though he doesn't know it. I think he's downgraded, but it's the right step at the right time. I thought Hermansson was, you know, a couple of jumps higher than he should be going, and although he's lost out on the main event and a big chance, I think he's fell into a nice spot where he's jumping up a level, but it's against Jacare, who's, I think, probably in his 40s now. He's on the decline. It's still a big name, and it's still on a pay-per-view main card. It's still a huge fight. I think the opposition in front of him is more winnable. I don't think he would have got by Hermansson. I do fancy his chances against Jacare, and that's really great for Holland, who's trying to. I think he's trying to set a record, isn't he, with this win? So I fancy his chances. I think he might be able to get a knockout win and look sensational in this one. I really do. I really fancy him going into this.
It'll be interesting to see how both guys fight, because I can't really predict what both guys are going to do. You've seen them fight multiple different styles. Kevin Holland, his last one, aggressively pursuing the takedown, didn't want to be on the feet with the, what was the young gun he had? I can't remember his name, but he was fighting up a division. He shouldn't have been there. But he didn't want to stand with him. He looked for the takedown, ended up slamming him and finishing him. Jacare, he fought Blachowicz and he held him against the cage, had a real grappling, heavy approach. But then you look at both their fights before those ones, maybe not Jacare's because it was the Hermansson fight where he got dominated. But before that, they both like to stand, bang. So I just don't know which version of each fighter we're going to get. And that will really play a key role in who wins this fight. Because if they decide to grapple, I think Jacare just out-grapples him all day. I don't think it's going to be competitive. But on the feet, the range of Holland is a big advantage. He can sit on the outside and ping him. We've seen him put people away with it. Look what he did to Joaquin Buckley. Like, one punch, the cross, put him down. And that was the end of the night. So, excited to see that one. But before that, we have a fantastic heavyweight bout. Cyril Gane's been rebooked multiple times now, and this is probably his best one yet against Junior Dos Santos. Awesome fight. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great fight. It's that test he needs. It's several levels up, isn't it? Now to Junior Dos Santos, who's a UFC legend, heavyweight legend. Again, he's on the decline. He is gettable at this point. Can he knock him out? Has Cyril Gane even got a knockout in the UFC? He's been very submission heavy.
I don't think he has.
It's gonna be tough to submit Junior. I think that's what it just makes it interesting. But he's on 3 defeats on the bounce, so it's make or break now for Junior. And as we said earlier, the cut's coming, and imagine he's on a huge wage. If he's getting set up to lose really against this prospect, and people are piping up Cyril Gane, but it could be a tough night because Junior he showed moments of he's still got it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just more about his chin more than anything at this point, and is Gane the guy to trouble him really? He didn't put Tanner Boser out. He's got 2 chokes, and yeah, that's it really. What do you think?
Well, I mean, Junior's biggest problem is his like you say, his chin. He's been finished. Big punches have been knocking him out. But before that, I mean, Derek Lewis couldn't do it, and Derek Lewis is one of the heaviest hitters in the UFC. But I don't think technically he's losing to people. Curtis Blades, maybe. Curtis Blades outdid him and just beat him up on the feet. But the problem there is probably that he expected Curtis Blades with a wrestle-heavy approach. Curtis Blades come in standing, and so he was just spun out and got finished. I don't know what the game plan was there. But outside of that, Francis Ngannou finished him. Someone else did. Rosenstruck finished him. It's like these heavy hitters is just not what Cyril Gane has showed he is. Not to say he can't do it. It's heavyweight. Everyone's got power. Maybe he lands something huge. But I expect Cyril Gane to try and outpoint him or submit him. I don't know if submitting him is the wisest thing to get into. He's got a black belt himself. So maybe not the submission. But I think Cyril Gane's going to try and outpoint him and just do better work, which is something Dos Santos has shown throughout his career that he's really good at. He's a good volume striker. He's got good combinations. So I expect this to be a good fight. I'm not writing off Dos Santos in this one. I think Dos Santos can definitely get a win here, which he does desperately need.
Yeah, and that's why it's such an interesting fight, because Cyril Gane doesn't have what the other fighters have had. And just not in terms of talent and quality. The 3 guys who've beat Junior Dos Santos lately are right up there in heavyweight. Cyril Gane's not there yet. He's also doesn't have that one-punch power, or hasn't showed it yet. Junior Dos Santos against Rosenstruck, he was winning that fight. He was boxing well, and he got caught eventually. But so it just makes it an interesting fight, and it's a real acid test. And if Gane comes through this, it's onto the big leagues. Then it's onto them really big fights at the top of the heavyweight division, and I think that's what the UFC want, because he's a popular guy. I think a lot of people are pretty certain he's going to run through Dos Santos. I'm not quite there yet, but this is the fight for him. This is a huge showcase fight, and it's his chance to go and show what he's about.
Absolutely. We'll jump on prelims. Just pick out a few. First one I want to pick out is the first fight on the early prelims, according to UFC's page. So I don't know if this is correct, but Chase Hooper's opening the early prelims according to their page against Peter Barrett. I believe Chase Hooper fought on a main card in his last fight. Am I wrong in saying that? Was Alex Caceres not the... No, it was the featured prelim on UFC 250. It was Chase Hooper versus Alex Caceres, right?
Well, he was getting some hype behind him, wasn't he? But that was a tough loss. That was a step up that he lost, and he's back down. He's back down to the bottom of the card now, but he's still on a pay-per-view. So it still shows that they hold him in some regard. But he's got work to do. He's got a lot of work to do right now.
Yeah, but he went from the featured prelim to the first fight on the early prelims, according to not Fight Pass, according to UFC's website. So this isn't always right. So he could be further up the card, but who knows? And also the other thing to notice is this is a huge card. There are a lot of fights on here. Do you want to pick out a couple to speak about?
So we've got the featured prelim is Cub Swanson against Daniel Pineda. I think Pineda looked brilliant last time, didn't he? Herbert Burns was hugely fancied and he absolutely dominated him, and it was ruthless. And Cub Swanson's another one of them guys who we're speaking about, who's on the downslide. But by all accounts, he's in the junior census, both, where he's probably fighting for his career right now. But last time out, he looked good. He got a good win over Kron Gracie, and he needed it because he'd lost 4 on the bounce. And this is a really good chance to build some momentum off a guy like Pineda, who has just coming off a big win. He can steal all that shine, he can take it back, and Cub Swanson has been one of the top guys for so long. I'd expect him to come through this test.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that Herbert Burns fight was a weird one because Herbert Burns missed weight there. How much did that impact the fight itself? And also the fact Herbert Burns really, really put a lot of faith in his grappling ability, and he was trying to stay on the ground, and yeah, he just didn't look great in that fight, did he? Whereas Cub Swanson's much more of a mixed martial artist, in my opinion, and more tested. We've seen Cub Swanson in a variety of situations, and he's had varied results, but I do expect him to beat Daniel Pineda, and I expect it to be mostly on the feet. I don't think it's going to be like the last one where Herb Burns was happy to sit on his back on the ground. So it'll be an interesting test. Keen to watch it.
Yeah, and then besides that, we've got Mackenzie Dern against Verena Jandarova, which I'm pretty sure they're both real. Obviously McDermott is, but Jandarova, I think she's known as well for her BJJ skills. Yeah, she's a black belt as well. 2 submission wins on the bounce against Herrig and Martin. I'm expecting Dern to decision this one out. I don't think either one will submit each other, but I think Dern will do enough, to control the fight and win it that way.
Well, I knew Mackenzie Dern was a jiu-jitsu fighter. I didn't know about Jandarova, but if that's the case, I expect it to be all striking then. And Dern's got a really good striking coach. It's Jason Perillo from memory. Don't know anything about Jandarova's camp. So if it's a striking battle, I'd probably favour Dern just because I have no idea. But I don't expect it to be a grappling match if they're both really high-level grapplers, right? Because neither one's going to want to put themselves in that position to be submitted,
No, this is the fight where I'm kind of looking, as someone from Europe, from the UK, I'm looking at this fight saying this is the one that might put me asleep at 3 a.m. in the morning. I feel like these two might cancel each other out. It might be a dud, but Mackenzie Dern, she's a big girl for the weight, and if she's training with Jason Perillo, she's putting her hands together, she could cause some damage. She's big, she's strong. She's obviously got some pop in the punches. I think she could pull off something like that, but I do expect it to be on the feet. I don't expect them really to entertain that type of that ground game. But yeah, and then besides that, we've just lost Angela Hill, who's pulled out of a fight against Tisha Torres, which is a shame because that would have been a fun fight. Where you're talking about fights putting you to sleep, that one would have woke you up because them two would have been going a million miles an hour. Hopefully they can get someone in for Tisha Torres. She's still appearing as on the card. It'll be interesting to see if anyone can step up.
Yeah, outside of that, the other one fight I spoke about was the Chase Hooper against Peter Barrett fight. Not much to really be said there, though. How much has Chase Hooper really improved from his last fight? Because we saw his jiu-jitsu is fantastic. No one's going to want to grapple with him. But has his striking improved to the point where he can stay on the feet and really be a mixed martial artist,
Yeah, and just lastly, I want to mention Gavin Tucker against Billy Conantino. If I'm making an early pick for Fight Night, I think that might be it. I think Conantino, every time I've seen him, he's been super fun. And Gavin Tucker last time out looked like a beast when he was. I think he took out Justin James, and he's looked relentless as well. So I expect these two to clash, and it's going to be a bit of carnage. But besides that, yeah, not much else on that undercard.
Absolutely. So that's UFC 256. Looking forward to it. Jump on some news now. And the first thing I've got is probably the one that everyone was going to bring up from last week that we missed. We didn't miss it. It happened late in the week. Yoel Romero has been released from the UFC. At first, we didn't know why. Then Dana White came out at the press conference and said he's on lost four of his last 5 fights. He's 44 years old, and they're doing a bunch of cuts. I don't think they needed to cut him. I don't know about you, but I thought he won 2 of his last 4 fights, and that Israel Adesanya fight was barely a fight, so I don't know if I count that as a loss for him. But I didn't think he was worthy of being cut. What did you think?
No, I don't think he deserved to be cut, but I do think it makes sense. Because as Dana was saying, he's 44. He's lost these fights. Whatever way you spin it, he's lost the fights. What you do with him now? And also, he does sometimes stink the place out when he fights. Do you want to put him in another title shot if that's what he's going to do when he gets it? And plus the fact that he's probably on a lot of money, and the UFC are looking to save money right now, so it makes sense to me. It's not the saddest news in the world. It's not that I didn't necessarily think Romero was going to go and go and win the title. I didn't see him doing that, especially when Izzy's there. Are they going to book that rematch? I don't think they are. Is anyone going to book Izzy? Beat Izzy? They're not. And it's also not that sad because I just know Romero's going to go off and he's going to get paid millions of dollars to go and fight someone. He's speaking about boxing, Bellator are right there. They'd love to snap someone like him up. So it's shocking just because he's so talented and he's such a fan favorite. But if on paper, really, when you look at it, it's not that shocking. And then when it's also not that sad because he's gonna do well. He's gonna be fine.
Yeah, I agree, but I think that the biggest issue was that Israel fight being so bad, they're not going to rebook it. I do think he can beat Israel. I think he can beat everyone on the roster. I think at any specific night, he can beat everyone. Maybe he loses to them in other times, but I do think he has the ability. He is definitely one of the best middleweights in the world. And for him to be taken out of the best organization in the world, the biggest organization in the world, he's just going to become champ wherever he goes. I just don't think there's going to be any competition that can handle with the skill set and ability he has. Maybe in 2 years' time when he's 46, if he's still fighting, he's gonna show his age and he's going to have some trouble. But right now, the Real Romero we saw in his last outing against Israel Adesanya, or the outing before against Paulo Costa, he is championship material in both Bellator, ONE, PFL, Ryzen, wherever. So he's going to go on and become champion. People are going to try and discredit his championship because he's not in the UFC. But, hey, take it from my word, I think he beats a lot of the guys in the UFC.
Yeah, he does. He definitely does still beat a lot of people. He's still a top guy. He's still, and on a different night, he would have been a UFC champion. But right now, when Dana White says the facts are there, and he has lost 4 of his last 5. He did look terrible against Israel Adesanya. They both look terrible, really, in fairness. And then he's also 44. I know he's a freak, but how long can he keep doing this? But I think he's fine. I think he's fine. I actually think he might go into boxing. I think the Jake Paul fight's an interesting one. Mike Tyson and might be looking for another opponent. Yoel Romero, he's such a freak. He's very sellable. You could sell a pay-per-view based off him, and especially when he's backed by someone like George A. Masvidal, he'll do fine. And I think he'll have a couple of big fights and then he'll cash out. But it'll be interesting to see where it ends up because we've had the instance where Anderson Silva, no one wants to touch him. Yoel Romero, I think he's going to have a queue around the block because he's still top level fighter. He's got lots of sellability, markability, and he'll do fine.
Before we jump on to that boxing, I just want to ask you, who do you think that these 60 cuts could be? Because some people that come to mind are Tyron Woodley, one of my favorite fighters, but he's coming off 3 losses in a row. What do you do with him? There's not really many routes for him to get back to the title. Maybe they cut him. Who do you think are the biggest contenders to be cut?
It's the people who are either difficult to work out. Tyron Woodley, I think Dana said he's the most difficult person he's ever worked with. That's not good for you. Also styles. UFC have shown that even if you're a top fighter, if your style isn't really what they're into, you can go. Corey Anderson just went, even though he's one of the top guys. So I think it's people with maybe point type styles, things like that. Heavy wrestling styles. They're at risk, and just anyone on a long streak. I think as good as Formiga and Yoel Romero are, they have lost 3 on about. That's trigger points at that point. I think the UFC do say at that point, if you're losing 3 in a row, you're not getting back to a title, and that's the way they think. But it's a tough one because they're making way for all the new wave. It seems like we're getting a watered down product, but as long as they're not cutting the top fighters, it's just a part of the course. I think we're going to see it. It'll be interesting to see who goes. But yeah, Woodley is just saying that he's definitely someone who needs to watch his back at this point. But I think he might be happy to go because he'd make a bunch of money somewhere else as well.
Yeah. We'll move on from that. I'm sure we'll have more to talk about that next week when more people get cut. But the biggest news of today, a lot of people aren't happy about this. I think it's a very interesting booking, and that's Floyd Mayweather boxing Logan Paul. I don't know why this fight exists. I don't think it's going to be competitive in the slightest, but what are your thoughts?
I feel bad for boxing fans really, because this fight's gonna sell millions. Like, it's definitely gonna do well, but at the same time, it's making a mockery of the sport, because I'm sure Danny Garcia and El Spence didn't do very well. Like I'm sure they didn't do the type of numbers this is gonna do, and yeah, it's just obviously credit to both men. Go and make your money and do that, but what's the point? I don't even see the point in fighting Logan Paul. You might as well go and fight KSI, beat him, or go and fight Jake Paul, who's looked half decent when he's fighting. Logan Paul has done nothing. He hasn't looked good at all, but he's managed to pull it off. So I'll be lying if I said I wouldn't be watching it.
Yeah.
But I just think it's not good for boxing at this point. So, and whatever way they spin it, I know Mike Tyson was saying we should thank these guys, but I don't think true boxers and real boxers are getting any benefit from this. I honestly feel that it's just the people involved who are going to be making a bunch of money. Floyd will make his money, but I don't think it's going to go back into his promotional company. Logan Paul will make his money and bounce back off to YouTube. It's yeah, it is what it is, but it's where we're at, isn't it? This is where boxing's at in 2020.
Well, that's the thing. It's like these boxing matches might do millions of pay-per-views. It might be huge spectacles. But those people that watch those pay-per-views, maybe 1% of them are going to watch other boxing fights. I don't imagine anyone is tuning in to watch Logan Paul thinking, oh, let me watch Canelo Alvarez fight. You know what I mean? I think they're going to watch these big YouTube spectacles, but it's not going to carry over into boxing. And that's fine. I understand why both these guys are doing this, because why would you not make money? It's not like this is a competitive fight. I'm sure Mayweather knew taking this fight that he probably won't even train. Maybe he does some training just to keep in shape, but he's not going to specifically tailor his camp to fight Logan Paul. And I'm sure Logan Paul has the same idea, right? He's not coming into this thinking he can beat Floyd Mayweather. He's probably coming into this thinking, I'm going to make a fuckload of money fighting Floyd Mayweather, so why would I not do that, you know? I don't think it's going to be a competitive fight. I don't think there's any reason to break down the X's and O's. Do you think there's any chance Logan Paul wins this?
No, I don't even think there's a chance Floyd's gonna go full whack on him. It's an exhibition bout. It's gonna be like Tyson Jones. They're gonna just mess about in there, and eventually Logan will fall down. And it's a fake fight, It's exhibition. This is a someone who performs on camera for a living in Logan Paul. This is what he does. And Floyd will go in there. He'll mess about with them for a few rounds, and then Logan will fall down, and we'll have a bunch of rappers singing in the middle of it. Snoop Dogg shouting shit on the camera, and it'll be a mess. But people will eat it up. But as you were saying, people who are watching these fights are not going and watch. So people who tuned into Tyson Jones, and this is what Eddie Hearn and promoters say. It says, "Oh, it's good for boxing because we're gonna get some of these young fans in, and they're gonna watch the sport." But they're not. The people who tuned into Tyson against Jones are not then going, "Oh, I'll watch Errol Spence next week." They're just not doing that. They might go and watch Ryan Garcia, but besides that, they're not tuning into boxing. They're not sticking to boxing. They're just interested in these kind of freak shows. So yeah, fair play. Go and get your money, but what I'm sure people ain't bothered by the direction it's going this year. When we thought you might get Wilder Fury 3, or we thought we might get Joshua Fury, and we've ended up with these.
That's true. Hey, I'm not against it. Let's be honest. I think as someone who's not super into like following boxing like as I do MMA, I think this is an entertaining fight. I'm definitely going to watch it. I don't think it's a proper fight, like you said. I think it's not going to be competitive. But hey, it exists. Last thing before we move on. Do you think there's any chance they actually book Yoel Romero against Jake Paul? Because I just can't even fathom Jake Paul thinking to take that fight.
Well, yeah, I think the problem is I feel like Jake Paul wants like an English speaking person to kind of bounce off in the Pence conference. So he's called out Masvidal, Ben Askren, Danis, and McGregor. He left out Artem Lobov, who I think could be a good matchup. He's left out Yoel, and I think that's maybe because they're not, native English people or English speaking, and he kind of wants that, type of thing. So that might prevent it. But then if you've got Masvidal kind of hyping up, or if Masvidal says, if you beat Romero, I'll fight you, or McGregor says, if you beat Lobov or Danis, I'll fight you, that's how something like that might happen. It's Jake Paul's the one where it is quite interesting because he has looked good. He's got some good knockouts. And he's not getting above. Well, he is getting above his station, but not too far above. He's not fighting Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
He's trying to fight, like, he's calling out Ben Askren. Ben Askren, who's notoriously one of the worst strikers in in the UFC history. So it's he's staying kind of in his lane, just about. No, he's probably out his lane, but still, it's a bit more feasible than what Floyd and Logan Paul are doing right now.
Yeah, even that Conor McGregor call out is much more realistic than fighting Floyd Mayweather. There's levels to it. MMA fighters are not going to be as good as like pure boxers like Mayweather and those kind of guys. But hey, it is what it is. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap it up?
And what else have we got? Just one thing from the card this weekend we forgot to mention. Did you not see that Georgian guy fighting?
No, I must have missed it. Who was that?
His name. What's his name? It's Tapori, or he's only 23. He beat Yusuf Zalal a few months back. Right. Ilya Tapori. He looked sensational. Like he come in. He was throwing boxing like Canelo. Basically, he was hitting the body, coming up top. If you get a chance, go back and watch Jerry's once.
Yep.
He looked sensational, and last time out he was heavy with the wrestling. So he's 23 years old, another Georgian prospect, and he's shown the hands. He's kind of got the Chimaev vibes where we thought he was a wrestler, then he shows the hands, and he's got hands as well. So, and he's 23-year-old featherweight, and he looks like the next big thing. And I just can't believe we forgot to mention him before. So sorry about that.
Yeah, I remember that now. That was that. He landed a hectic body shot, left hook to the body. Then he came over with a. It might have been an uppercut, or he ended up putting him down with the right hook, eh?
Yeah, it was a savage knockout, and it was huge, and it was one of the standout moments of the night, and I can't believe I forgot to mention it because he looked sensational. He was the standout, performance on the card for me. Besides Vettori, he looked great, obviously, but especially when you're 23 years old and you're 2 fights into your UFC career, and you've got to win over Yusuf Zalal, who I quite rate. So he's definitely one to watch out for. I think they'll move in quite quickly.
All right, well, that'll pretty much do it. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll speak to you next week to recap all the action from the pay-per-view.